It's so much harder to leave a product when it's connected to a community than when it's just the product.
If your story is real, I think people can still read it, whether it's, on their phone screen or in real life. The fear factor is something that every founder has, but you cannot listen to it. Mm-hmm. It is, as they say, the devil on your back. But
we find at CXG, we did a big study on this. It's never been easier to launch a brand, but actually breaking through and becoming sustainable and keeping loyalty from the customer. Not just one purchase, but the customer lifetime value is really, really hard.
He was in the USSR, and his mother took him to the black market to purchase a forbidden French fragrance. Mm-hmm. And his mother handed over 6 months equivalent of rent for this French fragrance, and he saw her put it on and completely transform before his eyes.
Welcome to the Luxury Edit. My name is Silvia Coleman. I'm the head of market intelligence and strategic growth for CXG. And today I have the genuine pleasure of sitting down with two very compelling voices in the world of beauty and lifestyle. I have here with me today Alina Roytberg, who is the co-founder of The Maker and previously the co-founder at Fresh, as well as Rose Pilato, CMO at The Maker and also previously with Fresh. And Alina and her husband, Lev Glasman, are two-time founders who started Fresh in 1991. They went on to build it into one of the most beloved beauty brands of our generation before they sold it to LVMH. And they're doing it again, this time with The Maker. The Maker is their second act. It is a fragrance, beauty, as well as hospitality brand that's built around the idea that luxury doesn't have to choose between beauty and meaning. Also joining us today is Rose Pilato, who's been with the story for the long haul, first with Fresh as the global director of communications, and now, of course, bringing the same depth of understanding in her role as chief marketing officer. So a few people have had a front row seat to both eras of this brand building journey. And together, they with Lev have built something that's truly and genuinely unusual, a brand that has at its heart a hotel, a creative philosophy that's rooted in personal conviction, and a customer who's fiercely loyal. So today we're going to dive into the origin story, the lessons learned, and what does it actually take to build a brand that lasts. So Alina and Rose, a very warm welcome to you both. I'm very excited to have you here. So my first question, and I want to dive straight into the origin story of Fresh, the Fresh chapter. Alina, legend has it that you started with $10,000 borrowed from family. You can confirm or deny. A $5 soap at a time when soap was very inexpensive. And on your first day, you made $700. So you were essentially betting that people would pay a premium for something they could get for $1. Banking on this idea that if the story and the sensorial experience were right, that would work. And so that instinct that beauty is the ultimate democratic luxury is something that runs through everything you've built. Where did that conviction come from? And do you think that still holds true today?
Well, Silvia, thank you for having me on here. And, it's those are the big stories, and they're really important stories. And in hindsight, when you look back at 35 years and you think about, what was driving you in the beginning, I don't think it was a business idea. I think it was a dream of something that you thought did not exist for what you were looking for, and you thought perhaps maybe you can create it. Mm-hmm. I think the fear factor is something that every founder has, but you cannot listen to it. Mm-hmm. It is, as they say, the devil on your back. But, we both felt that what was going on in beauty at the time was really dry and cold and chemical and clinical. Mm-hmm. And we didn't understand where, any of it was coming from. I think you had to be a scientist to understand the ingredients. And we felt that the history of beauty is the history of civilization. We're fascinated with different cultures and how certain remedies and myth actually became real treatments. And we wanted to really dive into it. And, with a bit of instinct and a lot of books and passion, we decided to create a little world of our own. And I think at the time, in the early 90s, the only thing you kind of had to create the world, the idea was that you open a shop. I think that was how immediately you knew you would connect to somebody, you'd be able to tell them how you're excited about what you're doing. And I think also one of the biggest lessons from the beginning is when you open a store that somebody has to open the door to walk in, you're extremely grateful for that customer to come in. And whether it's ultimately, was the biggest, I think it's the biggest knowledge, and it's probably the biggest lesson that I always talk to, whether I'm meeting with teams or whether I'm meeting with students, is the part of being grateful for every customer is something that has to really lace through your whole experience, because they're not going to be easy to get. And when they choose to walk into your world, you have to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that gratitude you talk about, being grateful for your customer, is something that really has to shine through, and it makes for loyal customers. But also what you mentioned earlier, that conviction and courage eclipsed the fear. That's so important in any brand story, and it's so nice to see that carried through. You mentioned earlier lessons. So that is actually my next question. Thank you for segueing into that. We know, you've scaled 2 brands, you've built 2 brands. Every successful end story has ups and downs. We tend to talk about the ups, not so much the downs. But my question is really around the valuable lessons that you learned with Fresh. And I'm sure all the lessons carried over into the Maker, but what are some of the very specific, most valuable lessons that you learned at Fresh, especially given the Maker is this lifestyle brand? You have hotels, fragrance, home goods, hospitality, all intersecting and converging all at once.
All having roots, I think, in the development of Fresh. In a way, a store for us was a place of hospitality. This is where we wanted people to walk in and feel really welcome, whether you're sharing a story with them or whether you're having them, refreshing drink, but you ultimately giving them an advantage to something, a knowledge of how they can make their skin better, and by doing so, probably feel better. Because frankly, I think that is a really important aspect of what beauty is about. Because it is not about to put you down. It's really about revealing, that inner beauty and the natural skin that we all born with and hopefully can regain. I think on the other side, not specifically to product, I think that when you are not coming from educated side in terms of how to do product, you know that you're creating products that you feel are missing, that you want to develop them and have something exciting because you have so many ideas. And back in those days, you just wanted to bring them to life. Our marketing at the time was really just creating more product. I remember that probably like in 1999 when Fresh actually entered Sephora right at the beginning of their journey in the United States, we had a gondola, and that gondola had probably about 400 products on it, from body care to skincare to fragrance. I mean, the edit is something that did not exist in our minds. This is something that we learned. And I think that you see successful brands now starting with 2 or 3 products, very core, and really focusing and diving in. I think that the attention span of a consumer had changed as well. So I think from the beginning, anybody who is about to launch a product, they have to think about, is this necessary? Can you tell a smaller, tighter story with more important message? I think those are just the things that you learn as you move along.
Yeah, it's so different. Today it's all about sharpening your focus, knowing that from the outset, as opposed to kind of you figure it out along the way as you go along, right? I want to ask you a question around scaling. When LVMH came on board, they gave you resources, they gave you the distribution network, marketing strategies, and then of course also the research center, so important to your brand, the Helios Research Center. But for years you kind of were very picky, choosy, protective around, your brand DNA, as one should be, because very oftentimes the wrong partner can dilute your brand, right? You want it to be amplified. How did you know that they were different? And also in the light of now the Maker, you have Tributi Ventures on board. They're very different as a partner, I think, from what LVMH was back then. So how do you choose something, and how do you know how to choose something that amplifies versus dilutes?
Listen, it's kind of like a marriage. Any relationship needs a learning curve and the right approach, and it sometimes takes time. I think when LVMH came on board as a major shareholder, what we knew is that we wanted to continue growing Fresh, and we wanted to develop it. And I think the laboratory's availability, was one of the biggest temptations to be able to join. I think the fact that LVMH is a luxury group of different maisons, we felt like Fresh had an opportunity to develop with the passion that we had, with the certain support of some knowledgeable people financially, but also while staying still independent. I think that is the biggest advantage of, for us to decide to partner with LVMH versus other companies that had been trying to contact us. And, that was the time, the original indie period when there were brands that were, very exciting to bigger groups, and they thought that that would be a way strategically grow. I think that was the time when the only kind of investments were coming from a strategic group, because beauty was a very specific industry at the time. Now, when we, go back 25 years later, 30 years later now, it's a very different climate. I think a lot of young founders are able to get access to money. There's a lot more VC groups that are, providing that. People are very interested in this industry because obviously they have seen some very successful M&As and incredible exits. So I think the money is there. I think the right thing is to find the right money. So while these people aren't going to manage your brand, I think the big open sort of white space, and I believe that's what Rich and Christina of TBV are talking about, is that in that early stage, in that seed or the first stage, there's still a lot of support that's needed for very young companies. Because a lot of times that experience that we've gained, Lev and I, over the years of growing Fresh, because we didn't have the money, so we had to learn a lot of these things ourselves. A lot of times young founders are thrown in very early success, huge distribution, whether it's Sephora, Ulta, and the knowledge is still not there. And it's really helpful for some of these young founders to have some support created within the group that's supporting them. And I think TBV had created that world. I mean, they've invested in many different companies, but they're all beginning. And they've kind of nurturing them through those early steps to become stronger, to become more independent, and ultimately, obviously, exit with a very lucrative deal.
Yeah, when you look at how quickly brands scale today, as opposed to, you've experienced it, Rose, you also, how quickly brands scale in this world, it's really amazing. And so having a partner who builds an ecosystem of support, like True Beauty Ventures, is super important to help these younger brands, of which there are so many in the market as well. So this conversation around the maker now leads me straight into my first question around the maker. Alina, you and Lev have been side by side, of course, since the beginnings of Fresh, and I think the philosophy that you had around Fresh, seems to me you've been able to together kind of bring that singular focus also to the maker. How intentionally did you build the maker around what inspired you in the beginning? And how are you able to translate something, and I think it's a question for both of you, this philosophy that you had at the outset, to a stranger, a customer, let's say, who walks in at Sephora and looks at that and says, I get it. I get that philosophy. I can see what they're trying to tell me.
Well, you wish that was that easy. I think that there's a part to the perception of luxury. And we've always thought that beauty is a very affordable luxury because of the fact is that there's an aspirational aspect to it. I think what slowly had changed in the last 15 years, I would say, or especially since the pandemic, is I think things that really matter had really prioritized. And people realize that the memories they have are not about a product they use, but more of the experience they have. Whether it's how you feel during using the product or how you feel being somewhere using the product, and the part that you remember is being somewhere. I think we used a lot of that, I don't remember who said that, but you don't remember the name or you don't remember the place, but you remember how it made you feel.
Maya Angelou.
Thank you, Maya.
Yes.
So this is the part which kind of was really driving, is it even the idea of creating a place, going beyond a store, just architectural space, but somewhere that could be that home, that experience where you have an advantage of having person there. So they're eating and sleeping there, but that's not the only thing you want them to feel. You want them to be awakened. You want them to be stirred up. You want them to emotionally connect to something. I think ultimately that's what an amazing hotel is, because hotel culture encompasses everything we do. We go to bars in hotels to have a drink, restaurants. It's no longer you have to travel somewhere. And I think that it's probably one of the most indulgent and most difficult ideas, but I think it is really the most satisfying.
Yes.
Because when people are experiencing something they really enjoy, or they're getting in touch with something they haven't felt, they're very outspoken. And that's where you get the reaction strongest.
Yeah, and I was going to add, I think, just having been by Lev and Alina's side for so long, I think there's two things. Is one, Lev's deep passion for fragrance really was also the story that we used to tell at Fresh, where he discovered fragrance when he was 8 years old. He was in the USSR, the Soviet Union, and his mother took him to the black market to purchase a forbidden French fragrance. And his mother handed over 6 months equivalent of rent for this French fragrance. And he was 8 years old, and he saw her put it on and completely transform before his eyes. And you have to remember, at this time, there was only one fragrance on the market that was called Red Moscow. And it was Red Moscow for women and Red Moscow for men. And I think about this moment all the time, is imagine a world where there's only one fragrance. What would that feel like? We don't even understand that in today's world, because we have so many choices. And every time I hear that story, I always get goosebumps. And I've heard this story quite a bit at Fresh and even at the Maker, but that really connected Lev to the power of fragrance and how fragrance is transformative. And there's that idea, plus when we were at Fresh, we would have loved to have had a fresh cafe, a fresh restaurant, a fresh hotel. And I think product brands crave that type of experience in which they can connect to the customer. And then on the hospitality side, it's almost like your relationship with your client begins and ends when they enter and leave the property. There's no continuation. And so hospitality companies are yearning to build that longer, deeper relationship with the client. So what the Maker has done, and that's really a testament to Lev and Alina's genius, and they're just thinking 10 steps ahead, is connect these worlds, connecting product with experiences and connecting experiences with product to really create this universe. And having the through line of passion, of authentic passion about fragrance. This isn't something that, oh, let's do fragrance because it's cool. It's a booming industry right now. It never starts there. For Lev and Alina, always has to start in a deeply authentic place. And I think they really converge in this beautiful, authentic and way that clients and customers connect with.
Yeah, I think customers are very, very wise, and they see through inauthenticity quite quickly. So when it's really conviction and passion, your own passion, that's coupled with this experiential meaning and element, I think it's very powerful. Last week you were telling me about some experiences that I think are so unique. Can you tell us a little bit about the fragrance library and the mixology, the drinks mixology, that I thought was very interesting?
Yes, I mean, I think a lot of people are like, again, fragrances, hotel, how does that connect? And they were always part of the inception. From day one, Lev had the foresight. There was this little closet that could have easily been used as a linen closet. And he said, nope, I want to turn this into a fragrance library. And so it's this little nook that's available to our hotel guest, where it's his collection of private fragrances, over 100 that he's collected all over the world. Now, of course, the Maker fragrances too, where guests can go and explore and play. That's truly unique. We like to say our hotel's almost like the fragrance hotel, because there's so many experiences, and then come to the lounge where we offer our fragrance cocktails. And actually all of our fragrances inspired our mixologists to create these beautifully crafted cocktails that you can experience there. And it's truly multisensorial. Yep. You're smelling the fragrance, you're tasting it, And what was beautiful about the process is that she didn't do it literally like, oh, there's chamomile, I'm going to put chamomile in. It's like, this reminds me of this gin that uses lavender. I'm going to use that. And so what's happened is that anyone can go, they can order one of these cocktails. They're brought a tray of fragrances. They can smell and sip. And it turns out it's one of our places where we sell the most fragrances.
It's amazing.
And because it really accesses so many different parts of the brain.
Yeah.
It's such a different experience. And this is how we are trying to scale that experience of going to the hotel, is that. And then also, we also had a resident tarot card reader who would give tarot card readers that inspired us to actually create a tarot deck. Alina collaborated with a Ukrainian artist. And we created a tarot deck. And then we thought, let's marry the tarot reading with fragrance readings. So people can come into our store, they can pick a card, and that card is paired with a fragrance. So say you pick the sun, it's, something joyful is coming to you, something happy, and Revel is this fragrance that represents joy and celebration. So that's the fragrance for you. And we did this with Goop, actually. And this experience drew such a large crowd. People were crying after these readings. And surprisingly, the card that they picked and the fragrance that they picked really spoke to them.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
So these are the types of experiences that I think allow people to understand, wow, fragrance is so much more powerful than a scent. Gone are the days of the woman spraying, a blotter in a department store and like, oh, get away from me. We're really trying to connect fragrance to that feeling that Lev had, that it's transformative, that it's powerful. And that's our goal.
I can imagine a lot of people leaving that experience, going home and trying something like that at home. They say that people make the biggest changes in their lives very often after they travel somewhere. It inspires them to change things, right? So that, again, we're alluding to that idea of memorability and neural pathways and,
Inspiration is everything. That's the part. It means that your mind was open because, you started working and thinking about how can you enhance something in your life. That is the point. Ultimately, you want that.
So we're talking about the hotel, and it's genuinely one of the most unusual brand assets in the beauty industry. I think you were truly the first ones. I've never heard of something like this before. It's unique.
That's a really big thing to do before starting a brand.
It's original. It's original. Every room is designed around creative archetype. You give guests fragrance samples instead of little chocolates at turn-down service. I love that. I think most of your bedding sales even come from people, linen sales, that have never stayed at the hotel. So you're doing extraordinary ambassadorship work. I've actually experienced it personally. I've been to the hotel. It's wonderful. As you scale, how do you make sure that you protect that sense of being something unique and sort of that the customer is invited into something very intimate and personal, that you're not just another fragrance brand with an origin story. So this needs to be something that's sustained over time. How does that happen?
Well, I think historically, if you think about it, many luxury brands use fragrance to scale. And the brands that do it right are the brands that create emotional connection to a product, that the product can stand on its own without anything else. And that's really what we strive to do at The Maker, where for us, the hotel isn't an origin story. It's our physical home of the brand. And like I said earlier, fragrance isn't an afterthought. It's the first thought. So for us, it's about how do we, just like I shared those experiences, those events, how do we carry that emotional piece, that connective tissue, that when you open the fragrance, you feel like you're transported to the cafe or transported to our bed. So for example, our number one scent is Dream. And Dream is inspired by falling asleep in our cloud bedding and connecting to your childlike fantasies of patisseries and sweets. And when we tell this story and people smell the fragrance, they're like, oh, this smells like a hotel vanilla niche fragrance. I'm like, I didn't know a hotel vanilla fragrance was a thing, but we carved it out. People understood it right away. And that's, I think, the emotional storytelling, that deep connection with the customer, these special events are, and also the emotional assets and the content creation that can make people feel like they're transformed, they're transported to the hotel is really important.
I think you've just answered my next question, which was going to be about your positioning, because you're in a space, of course, we know fragrance has been sort of the headliner for the beauty industry. It's quite polarized. At the top end, we're doing well. In the mass market, at the top end, indie and niche brands, which is what you are. So you're in this space of clean, genderless, bohemian, experiential. It's a crowded space. So my question was going to be, but I think you've answered it. What is the single idea that the maker owns that if it were to lose that, it dilutes the brand? But you've just said it. It's that, right? It's this experiential memorability, connection, understanding the customer. Or if you have anything to add to that.
I think whilst it starts with a story and an image, and I think that we are in the world where people actually now are more comfortable talking about fragrance even before smelling it. I mean, the progression of perfume talk and the incredible open market to people being willing to share the information about fragrance even before they get a sample. And I think niche online sales are the highest distribution for niche fragrances. I mean, it's incredible. We've entered into this field right at that time. When we launched our fragrances, actually we launched it digitally, we launched it online. So I think that crowded or not, when the people's minds open and they're able to accept more and more ideas, I think you just have to continue to stay original, to have your vision continue in the same way. It's not easy.
No, that's an art and science. To be true to yourself and yet stay relevant and adapt with the times, and be open to what also the customer wants, right?
Yeah. I think also what we're really tapping into is, who are you when you close that door? What inhibitions are going to melt away? And all of our fragrances are inspired by the fantasies and the stories that happen at the hotel. And people have different fantasies. I mean, some people might fantasize to just sleep. Some might have crazy, kinky fantasies. And we want to meet our customer where they are, and that's really what the beauty of an amazing hotel stay is that you can be whoever you want, and it's actually not escapism. It's more than that. It's actually connecting into that part of yourself that you don't allow yourself to be in public. And I think that's way more compelling than escaping from something. So I think we are really trying to tap into these really deep fantasies, and everyone has different ones, to allow yourself to be that. And fragrance really connects with that, because when you think about it, people are wearing fragrances for their different personalities. They're using it. I'm going to be outgoing today, or I feel kind of quiet, or I'm, want to wear something that's going to get me noticed. And so you use fragrance in that way as well. And that's why that idea is really paramount. It's even bigger than a hotel stay.
Yeah. Because we all contain multitudes, each one of us, right? And so this ability, you're essentially offering the customer a system, a way to express themselves in multiple ways.
And you show them something that they understand and they feel. I mean, we generally, I think, all empathetic naturally. So otherwise, why would we cry in movies, right? Because it has nothing to do with us. So I think, when you're reading and seeing a couple sitting at these old leather chairs by a fireplace holding hands and, looking at each other sadly, think, okay, maybe that's the end of the affair or a relationship or whatever. You could think of that. And then you can imagine that fragrance and how it smells, because it's not uplifting. It's rich and deep and sensual. But you can imagine that, right? Because you're seeing this image, you're reading about it, you're imagining these ingredients that are in it because you understand where they come from. All of that information is what sparked our olfactory brain to go into action before we even smell it. And I think, activating all those senses is really, really powerful, I think, in projecting these kind of products, which is why I think even the fragrance had pushed its way into much stronger presence in other categories in beauty so much more. I mean,
and it's available. This is available to so many more people than other avenues, which is also exciting.
At The Maker, we say make life sensual. And sensuality for us isn't necessarily sexuality, although that can be it. It's really the awareness of the senses. And when you think about fragrance, what it does, it unlocks the sixth sense, the emotion, because of the ability for fragrance to connect with your memories, with your smell, and really create this beautiful core memory. And so that's why fragrance is so powerful.
I was talking to someone about candles and fig candles, which I said it always reminds me of going to Croatia as a child because there's fig trees everywhere. So I hear you completely what you're saying, right? Triggering that sense of memory or even a sense of anticipation of something that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Possibilities, right?
Exactly.
I wish we could stay on this topic of fantasy, expression, possibilities, but we have to move into scaling and distribution, which is not as exciting, but maybe we can link it a little bit. So this idea of tension in the industry between wholesale and your own retail and DTC is really about, it goes beyond economics. It's about who owns the relationship with the customer and who controls the experience. So the question is really about coherence in this ecosystem of touch points. How do you make sure that you balance that correctly, this trade-off between what you've built on the DTC side, what's happening in wholesale, where you don't have as much control, for example, in the Sephoras, the Bergdorf Goodmans, and Goop, and so on and so forth of the world where you are present?
Well, I mean, it's in our experience early at Fresh, I mean, it's kind of obviously we've started with our own shop and then seeked out places that were similar to ours. So we've opened a lot of, I mean, yes, Barney's, but a lot of indie stores, like stores that were similar to what Fresh was at the time, where you develop a relationship with the owner and they're passionate about every brand they bring. And ultimately, they develop your business in a really similar way. No, maybe they're, merchandising is not the same, but they care about every product and every brand that they have. There's a quiet part of that. It's actually quite alive again in the fragrance area because, as you see, there's a lot of independent stores, very special fragrance stores, where the owners themselves are passionate curators and they create a presence and they're interested in bringing things, niche fragrances that nobody else has. So this conversation of fragrance stores had stopped being department stores or traditional chains, and it became more of that conversation that people own one-on-one, whether they have it online, because a lot of these stores have representation online, or, I think about just even like in Nolita in New York, the fragrance street where you have every brand their own store plus a few of the multi-branded fragrance stores. I mean, there's no limit to the amount of fragrance retail. I think one part that we understood in the beginning was the fact that somebody that is going to bring our products to their environment has to care about it. And there's one thing when you're doing it for growing your business. It's another thing when you choose distribution where you think it will help your brand awareness, or it would take you, across the country or bring you to places where you would not be physically. I mean, that was why the decision for Fresh to go in Sephora so early in the day, because we've only had 3 stores at the time, and we really thought that this would be a right environment for a brand because it was very democratic. We got the same amount of merchandising space as heritage brands. And when people would walk into the store and they would see this new brand, they'll feel, okay, this retailer believes in you. They're giving them the space, so we should pay attention. I think, the climate had changed quite a bit now. I think also the perception of luxury retail has also changed, because when it comes to fragrance, there's no such thing. I think it's not a situation where you have to choose a specific environment because that reflects who you are. I think now it's more you have to choose the environment where you think your customer goes to. And I don't think it's that exclusive anymore. There's place where you fulfill what you need, and then there's a place where you discover what you need. And when you think about parallel to fashion, if you have all the time in the world on a Sunday, would you rather, when you come to Paris, for example, or London, or Amsterdam, would you rather just walk around the streets and explore these small shops you don't know, or would you go to a department store where you'll see everything that you see in department stores in New York? So I think that fragrance customer really is interested in that discovery. So we have to try to figure out what are the right places for us to go to and not to be lost, and make sure that we can tell our story. There's no such thing anymore where you can build a counter or create a shop and shop, well, not at our level anyway, where a retailer is going to give you the space to really tell your story, or, put a bedroom in there. So I think that your branding and your strength has to be so powerful, and you have to do so much work, because retailers don't do that work for you anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, maybe you've had some support on that, but that doesn't exist anymore.
This is why we talk about these touch points as an ecosystem of touch points. And as you said, if you think of wholesale at these various larger companies as being just for discovery, then you make up what you need in experience and in experiential content for the customer in other places, right? It has, as you said, it has to be strong enough in other places to make up for, a touch point that's purely just about being exposed to the brand, let's say, right?
I think the brands now have to be closer to where their customer is, rather than the customer having to go there. People will go to a hotel 2 hours north of New York, but they might not, take a train to a store somewhere because they might find it somewhere else, or they'll just go online. So I think that theater might not necessarily exist in retail, that theater may exist in another way somewhere.
Well, we're seeing it with activations, with cultural activations, with pop-up shops, all these pop-ups that open up in the Hamptons or in the, in southern France. You just go where the customer is. You have to be present where they are. Right?
Think about how many, it's interesting, the new sort of retail that you see, there's the new specialty store in luxury is a store that perhaps, I think of like La Garçon downtown. You have specific, really high-end fashion brands, a few like a much ranks of certain other things, accessories, but then there's lifestyle items, maybe their favorite music, they're doing, fragrance, or maybe like this most amazing, house soap that they found somewhere. And what's interesting is that people sell because they buy into this world that you create, and then they buy all these different categories. Retail is not specialized anymore, so I think that you want to find partners like that maybe would express that. And it does take a longer time because this is a different kind of volume of the business, so you have to find ways to make it up somewhere else. But if you don't want to get lost in the noise, if your game is long term, if you want to build something that has longevity, and to be honest with you, that is something that we do, because I feel like here today, gone tomorrow has definitely not been our formula. So we're really trying to, make those decisions in the right way.
Yeah, and I think longevity is also a reason why so many brands are going the lifestyle route, because you really want to be present in so many different aspects of the customer's life to kind of embed yourself there, if you will, right?
But then you have this other thing where people aren't necessarily, consumerism just for the sake of that no longer exists. No. The young generation has to have a reason why they want to do something. The success of obviously resell and everything else, things, they find there's a value to certain things that have been created in a certain way. So I think that's where, this isn't about greenwashing, and sustainability is a really important part. What do you do and how you do it, that it actually, you're doing it for the reason why you want to utilize certain resources or use less of them, but still create something beautiful and usable and functional and memorable.
Yes. So, speaking of fragrance, and we already alluded to this earlier on, about this cultural moment that fragrance is having, one of the fastest growing categories in beauty, especially at the high end. So the storytelling around these niche and indie brands has never been more sophisticated. What are you planning at The Maker on doing in the next 2 to 3 years, so you can make sure that you continue to be a brand that's kind of directional and defining this? Question for both of you.
Well, one thing that we're doing right now is that we're actually repackaging, and we call it our packaging upgrade, where and Alina led this. So I'll let Alina speak to the inspiration behind it.
Well, the part of sort of, a part of the change that we were seeking is by going outside of our own shop. As you know, we have a store in Chelsea, 16th Street between 7th and 8th, and it's a quiet store, but it was sort of a showroom to us, obviously, to welcome some people as well as some content creators to have the experience of the maker without having to go to a hotel. And our initial packaging, secondary packaging specifically, series had been sort of quiet and about a color. And as we are, leaving our own home and we are in the outside distribution, and I think that we're part of the story of the brand really needs to be richer and it needs to stand out more. We rethought about our secondary packaging and actually thinking about a different way, and we're just transitioning it. We launched it with the new fragrance that we did at the end of last year, and we're actually moving all of our fragrances into it. We're bringing a color that's very much part of our fragrance concierge storytelling, and we're bringing that into the boxes. It's really like this ultimate red, the perfect red with the right balance of yellow and blue. And each fragrance, I've designed a special print for each one, and that's sort of a two-piece box where the story of the fragrance sort of expressed in a textile-inspired print, because that kind of goes back to my background of being a designer, and I feel like that moving aspect of trying to express Lev's fragrance nature, so to speak, in a way how it's represented in terms of obviously color and print, and then packaging it all in a certain much more of a discovery way of pulling off the lid, opening a box. There's more to the unboxing of that without necessarily using a lot of excess packaging anyway.
Yeah, unboxing is a big thing. That's really the moment when something arrives in your home and you're unboxing it. That replaces the moment in the store when a sales advisor is showing you something, right? It's emotionally very connective. So you're giving visual expression to the
exactly. So we want that story to start, to start talking, right? When you're pulling the box from your shipper box.
And I'm sure it's very emotionally resonant with the customers.
Well, it's an impact, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we found a really exciting resource in Holland. Actually, I found a maker who makes metal labels for bikes. And we've had them create the label for us to put on the glass as well. So it's kind of a real aluminum. It's just the thinnest of, and it could be engraved. It's certain things you can't do with paper. So it's really exciting. I mean,
that's very unique.
And we upgraded our travel spray to this beautiful custom bottle that Alina designed, and our discovery set. So this year was about taking what we've done and just kind of taking a step up in terms of the visual expression. And it's also a refocus on the core fragrances, the ones that are really connecting with our clients. So we've done a little bit of pruning. We don't want to be a brand that's going to have 100 fragrances. Sometimes you go to the counters and you feel so overwhelmed by brands with how many choices of fragrances they're giving you. And just like Alina said, one of the lessons we're trying to apply is the edit and really editing and making sure that what we're offering resonates. And if it doesn't, we won't be emotional. We'll just take it away. Maybe it'll come back, but we want to make sure that our edit is very thoughtful. And that also means new launches are thoughtful. So we're not going to be, some fragrance brands are launching every 6 weeks. And that's crazy for us. We will have a much slower cadence so that when something comes out, it'll be new, it'll be disruptive, it'll be innovative. We're working on an exciting new launch the end of this year. And our goal is to expand into other categories. We have lots of ideas, lots of different ways that we want to do it, but we really want to build a strong foundation. I think that a lot of brands run before they walk. And our goal is that we have a lot of room to grow, to bring in new customers to our current fragrances, to get people into the brand. And we can take our time doing that.
Yeah. So no launches for the sake of launches, but launches when they really matter, right? When they're really timely and you have conviction behind it.
Well, I mean, it takes a lot longer to
Yeah.
go through a bottle of fragrance. So I think, even from that point of
Yeah.
view, for people to rebuy, it takes a lot longer. So, for another option or for something else, you want to provide a very thoughtful idea. I mean, people, there's a lot of choices out there. And I think we have to feel that it's necessary in continuing telling our maker story, that it's like the next component of that experience. What olfactory experience do we want people to have from the next maker fragrance that they do not have yet? And, Lev has an incredible nose. He's an evaluator. He's an architect of the fragrances. He works with really some of the most top perfumers of this industry, just nature to the fact that he has a history of working with them, from Fresh as well, because even though Fresh did not pursue fine fragrance, but every product is sensorial. There's an aromatic aspect to everything. And while it's not perfume, but it is, certain naturals or the ingredients that provide something to enhance the base. So he has a really incredible reputation among the perfume industry. So with his vision, with his very unique gift, I mean, I think his olfactory profiles and his fragrance work is very, very original. It's very respected. So I think his evocation of a story, of an inspiration that he talks to us about when he starts working on something is always going to be unexpected. It's not something that we would have even thought. He does not follow. He really creates his own stories. And I mean, I was always impressed because I felt like literally he could smell a fragrance before it's been created, because when he speaks of it, it's not about a girl running on the beach. It's really just in terms of notes and accords and how that
Much
really,
more
really
nuanced.
feels,
Yeah.
right? And that's really cool. I mean, for us, it's been an incredible journey. And plus, I mean, I think because of that, we've had the incredible honor when we launched our fragrances in 22 to receive the Fragrance Foundation Indie Award for one of our fragrances, Stag. I mean, right out the gate.
Right out the gate, yeah.
And being a finalist in another year, I mean, that's a lot. This is a really thickly veiled industry, and I think it's great that they're opening the space for other expressions.
That's a huge accolade. I'm excited for what's coming next whenever it comes out. That'll be great. I want to ask you, Rose, a question around engagement models, cross-channel marketing. So you've been with Fresh, so you joined, this is sort of I would say DTC, pre-social media, or maybe around the time it was emerging.
Not post D2C, but
Before social media, right?
No, I'm
we don't want to date ourselves in here. And then today with the maker, we're fully in it. So, and you've kind of grown along with it, right? You've had to evolve with that. How has that been for you? And what are sort of some profound insights that you've gained from that experience?
I mean, that the way we're influenced to buy a product has changed dramatically. And even taking a step further back from Fresh, I launched Prada's first fragrance. And I remember it was all about advertising. It's about running scent strips in magazines and working with the top editors, and also picking the exclusive retail partner. And the Vogues of the world were the authority. The retailers were the authority. Then moving into Fresh, and Fresh was more of an indie brand when I started, but over time, the way of building influence changed too. It started with print magazines, and then it went to digital media, and then bloggers, and then creators or influencers, and advertising also changed too. People moved away from print. They were doing programmatic. And, I like to say it went from a world of 50 magazine editors to 5,000 creators. And so the way that people get influenced to buy is just so much more vast. And there's no single point of authority the way that there used to be. And it's really hard for brands to find their people some ways, and I think it's all about finding that community in different ways through, whether it's through a creator, whether it's through a super tastemaker, we call our customers tastemakers, whether it's through them and they're going to tell their friends, that's really changed. And I also think what's another big shift that we're seeing is what people are calling like performance PR too. It's the affiliate sites where it's no longer going, the organic mentions are going to be far further and few between, and that people are really going to be influenced by these affiliate links where the creator or even the publisher are making money off the sell of it. So I think the customer is starting to figure that out too. Like they're starting to figure it out, but they're getting bombarded by so many different sources that it feels completely overwhelming. Before you could open the magazine, say, okay, they gave me the top 5 products. Now they're following 100 different creators, and each of these creators are giving you literally 20 different recommendations in one single day. So I think the customer has a lot of fatigue, and I think the word of mouth, the friends, and finding the people that they really, really trust, and getting their recommendations that way is really important. Even their faith in retailers is not as strong as it used to be too.
Not at all.
So I think it just makes it so much harder for brands to break through. And while it's never been easier to launch a brand, really, it's really hard to break through.
We find at CXG, we did a big study on this. Yes, as you said, it's never been easier to launch a brand, but actually breaking through and becoming sustainable and keeping loyalty from the customer. Not just one purchase, but their customer lifetime value is really, really hard. And we also found, you mentioned community, building communities and word of mouth to be a key factor for brands to really build that lasting loyalty. It's so much harder to leave a product when it's connected to a community than when it's just the product.
Exactly.
It's just harder for the customer to leave. You feel like you belong. So that sense of belonging is, I think, super important. What else would you say, what else has stayed the same and what has changed, just quickly, in this post-DTC, post-social media world? But what stayed the same? What surprises you in that it's not changed and never will, in your opinion?
Well, I think that if your story is real, I think people can still read that, whether it's, on their phone screen or in real life. So I think that, you can't imitate that. I think that the fact of people still care about things. And I think that they want to find a shared cohort. I think they're curious. I think especially the new generations are very curious about things that matter. So, and I think they can read through the fakeness and the unreality, or at least most of them can, because they've already grown up with so much information and so much content, so they can see through it. They have respect for certain things that have to do with craft. I think people still do.
Yeah.
I know this sounds basic, but I think good product builds community. And
quality, I was going to say.
It's really that simple.
Yeah.
If you have...
That's the basis.
It's the basis.
Table stakes, right?
Right. But you would be surprised how many brands are out there that have okay product, not great product, okay product. But great product builds a community. And I've seen this time and time again. And it shows up in different ways. There's always going to be that mega client, that mega customer. We have them at the Maker, we had them at Fresh that just love it, and that's when you're onto something. When you have people that keep, like, the loyalty, that keep coming back, that responds to it, that write heartfelt notes. I mean, we just received a heartfelt note about this couple that just they invited us to their wedding because their scent was present during their engagement and was part of their story.
That's amazing.
So you can't manufacture that.
No.
That is truly, like, I think a big part of why we do what we do is because you are yearning to make that type of connection.
It's must be so rewarding for you.
Well, that part is incredible. I think any kind of notes, yes, but at the same time, that's the result of a certain hospitality experience that people have because they connected so much to their personal life. Some people are expressive. It's just interesting, when you think about, we're completely immersed in the life of reviews because, everybody's reviewing everything and you can see all of it, right? It's not any longer if you were unhappy, you came home and told your mother. Now you tell the world. So, and a lot of times people do spend time on, making reviews of things that displease them. But then there's people who also make reviews on things that they did, that they enjoyed, that they loved. A lot of times they don't make a public review. Sometimes they literally write an email or a note. And it's very special. And especially in a hotel, for example, it's very special for the team to receive it because, they work really hard to take care of these guests. And when somebody's really acknowledged this, it's rare that people do in a way that it's meaningful. But I think, that's a part that never changed. Just remember that, behind everything, there are people who are working hard and making it happen. So they take your purchase as a thank you for that work. So I think that appreciation is always there,
That's a nice lead-in into my last question. Unfortunately, I think we could talk for much longer here. We are almost out of time. And my last question is, what are your biggest lessons learned and proudest moments? You've actually just described probably one of them, but I'm sure there are more.
There's some of those things that probably I should not be mentioning. But, when we just launched the makeup fragrances, this was like the year after pandemic was still, we literally were all in 4 different places in the country and we were spending hours and hours on Zoom. This was a time when Zoom was so refreshing and we loved it because we were just on and we saw each other and we talked and we ate and we just continued to make plans and we weren't fatigued at all. But, that was the thing about that. Remember that feeling that even there were debates and exciting conversations, but there was this feeling about starting something together with people that care about it in the same way that you do. And just being excited about building something together. And I think that having, partners in that build right away from the beginning is always really significant. I think it helps to have somebody with you when you're starting a brand, for example, because you can really bounce some of these things because it's really hard. It's a very expensive business to build, when you think about what, just even what Rose had even listed in the fact in terms of the growth, whether it's paid marketing, and affiliates, it takes a lot of funding to be able to make that happen. And the results have to happen fast. So nobody has patience. So I think that the one lesson that I know is that at least going through all of that, you want to be able to be with people that are your peers that understand and believe that, ready to change, ready to navigate it. I think that was always something that I was always appreciative in, whether when it was in Fresh or whether what we're doing here at The Maker, especially because, we are working with people that we knew when they were, in the beginning of their careers, and now after being elsewhere and whatever, they've joined in. So, we're marching on. We're trying to create something that we all believe is special.
That's amazing. And proudest moment, I guess you're proud of that as well?
That is the proudest
That is the proudest moment.
Listen, to be able to see that people are still, they still believe in your stories and want to hear your stories, I think that's proud. But, listen, my proudest moments are many. I just don't think of them as my proudest moments. I know I share those moments with them.
Proudest moments, yeah.
And sometimes, after you walked for 10 miles somewhere and you come home and all of your joints ache, then you're not having a proudest moment. But I don't know, I'm not looking in life for proudest moments. I have 2 grown children and both of these girls I'm very, very proud of. And when I think of wanting to be proud, I think of them. I think we all survive and move on, but we just have to be passionate and care about what we do. That's something, and learning something new, doing things differently.
Yeah. So really what you're saying, that it's not one moment, it's the whole journey that makes you proud. I'm sure you as well. And
yeah, I think looking back, building something from scratch, this was the first go at it. And it's completely different than when you're stepping into a brand already set up with years of a history. It's just a totally different way of looking at things. So that has been so rewarding. And when you look back, we did everything we said we wanted to do. We wanted to get distribution. We won, Best Fragrance Indie Award. We secured investment. But, your dreams change. And as you accomplish one thing at a time, another dream comes up, or you have to pivot because something isn't working. And especially today, I think you just cannot be attached to what you thought success looks like. You have to adapt, and you have to really always, you can have a bad day, but you have to get up and think differently the next day.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the resilience and resourcefulness is what makes brands last.
It's a dynamic process.
It is.
And you have to keep on your toes.
Yes.
And also enjoy it all the while.
Yeah, and there's no playbook.
Yeah.
There's no right way to build a house. There's lots of different ways. And I think not getting attached to a paradigm or to the old way is really important.
Well, congratulations to you both. I'm so happy that you could join us today. I'm so excited to see what else comes out of the maker. As I said before, we could continue here, but we're out of time, unfortunately. Thank you so much for being with us today. For me, this was a very, very insightful conversation. I hope the same for you. Please remember to like this episode and to subscribe. Until the next time, take care.